I just wanted to make the point that if the gentleman has more questions, there'll be an opportunity to submit them in writing. That opportunity will be available. The gentleman from California, Mr. Royce, is recognized.
Thank you. Let me ask Mr. Alvarez. The Austrian economist von Mises, who did a lot of studies in terms of business cycles, came to the conclusion that central banks really have a tendency to sort of extenuate or to exacerbate those business cycles. And looking back at what the Fed did in 2002 through 2006 by setting negative real interest rates in June of 2002 forward, it would match the thesis that the Austrian economists always put forward, the thesis that the Fed, had this tendency to set interest rates too low, and as a consequence, from time to time, create these asset bubbles, a housing bubble in this case. Looking back, when you look at what the Fed did during that 4-year period, and when you look at the fact that central banks in Europe followed suit and did the same thing, do you think that thesis might be right, that was one of the reasons that we had such a balloon in the housing market?
Congressman, as a lawyer, there's good reason they don't let me be involved in monetary policy, and so I apologize, but I can't give you an educated answer to that question.
All right, well, then let's talk about another issue. We had a hearing here yesterday, and we listened to Paul Volcker, and he criticized President Obama's administration's plan to subject, quote, systemically important financial firms to more stringent regulation by the Federal Reserve. In his testimony to the House Financial Services Committee, Volcker said, and I'm just reading from Bloomberg News, but we heard him say it yesterday, such a designation would imply government readiness to support the firms in a crisis, encouraging even more risky behavior in a phenomenon known as moral hazard. Would you like to comment on Paul Volcker's opposition to having the Fed walk down this road with the administration and his concern about the consequences of that moral hazard?
So we too are very concerned about moral hazard from the designation of systemically important institutions, but we are concerned that the point we're starting from is too much of the public believes that some institutions are too big to fail. So the moral hazard problem already exists. And that's why we're asking for actually 2 revisions. One is a new resolution regime, resolution authority, because that helps offset moral hazard by making it clear that the government doesn't have to simply bail out institutions or because they're afraid of them going into a disorganized bankruptcy. Instead, you have a resolution regime where the government can impose haircuts on shareholders and creditors as appropriate, and that will help reinstitute market discipline. The second thing is more strenuous regulation and supervision of those institutions that are systemically important, including enhanced capital requirements, enhanced risk management requirements, and other things
to
offset the moral hazard.
Well, listen, I'm all for market discipline, but when the Richmond Federal Reserve says that 45% of the liabilities in our financial system back in 1999 were backed by the safety net of the Fed, were basically guaranteed or one way or the other by the Fed, and you know that number is far greater today. Whether or not you agree with the steps taken in recent months to prop up financial institutions, I voted against the bailouts, but whether you agree with it or not, it's apparent that the Federal Reserve became the path of least resistance for many of those bailouts, hence our concern here. So let me go to the final point made by Paul Volcker, who is the White House Economic Recovery Advisory Board chairman, who's so adamantly against the administration's plan here. He says the danger is that the spread of moral hazard will make the next crisis bigger. Now, if last time you had a moral hazard problem in that there was a presumption that the Fed was going to bail out 45% of the institutions, and now I think you'd concede it's a lot bigger than that, why wouldn't you heed Volker's words here, and why wouldn't we really be looking at some solutions to bring about market discipline? And why wouldn't we be considering that maybe von Mises and others were right in this whole issue of the Fed actually helping to compound our problem in terms of boom and bust cycles through your mismanagement of the interest rate?
If you want an answer, we'll give them a few seconds. We don't. If they come up against someone, Mr. Alvarez, you can respond briefly, or you can do it in writing.
The question is so complicated. I think in writing is probably better.
Okay. The gentleman from Minnesota is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first, I just want to say I support Representative Paul's effort to bring this legislation to the forefront, and I think we do need to review the responsibilities of the Federal Reserve to have a better sense of where we are today. You know, before the economic and financial crisis that we went through a year ago, we didn't see the Fed on the front pages of the paper, in the headlines, or even see the chairman give an interview on 60 Minutes. I mean, that was really unprecedented, and so I think it's only natural that a lot of people are asking questions about what the Federal Reserve really is about, as opposed to just the open market meetings that happen when they determine interest rates, for instance. So I think that given your role in the bailouts or AIG, et cetera, I think it's only natural to expect some interest in looking at this. So I think since you're exercising the Section 13.3 authority and invoking, in a sense, emergency powers, if you will, you know, why shouldn't we have a little bit more, as congressmen and members of Congress, the ability to look at where the Fed is going in understanding what is on the balance sheets. And you know, we're no strangers to the fact that I think the words that Chairman Bernanke mentioned recently, that his words in particular can move markets, I mean, when he speaks. And it just seems to me that why shouldn't you believe, or why should we believe, that pulling the veil back on some of the Fed's activities and exposing some of these secrets of the temple, if you will, could similarly move markets in significant ways and expose firms who may not be doing so well?
So, Congressman, that's in order to allow you to have that kind of oversight, we provide substantial information about our activities and balance sheet. I think part of the difficulty is we haven't been as good as we should be about making clear how much information we do provide to the public. Our website is filled with information about our balance sheet, which is audited by an outside accounting firm. All of our programs are explained in detail on the website. We have a monthly report that updates the exposures we have under the different facilities, including information about the collateral, general information about the borrowers, about the timing of the facilities, when they're intended to unwind, and the protections we've gotten for the taxpayer. In the monetary policy area, we issue, as I mentioned, the decision the moment it's made, detailed minutes shortly thereafter, and then a complete transcript and all the underlying memos after a lag. So there is a lot of information that we provide on all of our areas of responsibility, and it is not as secretive as I think it's been thought to be. Many of these strides are new, done in the last 3 or 4 years, and so it's quite a change from the days of the secrets of the temple that we were referenced earlier in the day, and I think you'll find that information very helpful.
Well, and you know, just to follow up, I just think knowing the taxpayers are paying more attention now. Even when I attend parades, people ask me about Representative Paul's bill because they want to, you know, and I think ask questions about some of the secrecy that's been out there. And some of this may have been more revealed in the last few years, as you mentioned, but it's really only the last year in particular where we've seen the Fed on the front pages and all the headlines, I mean, 3 times a week, for instance, and that's probably going to continue in the near short term, knowing that the Fed is holding and buying a lot of debt and buying it from the Treasury. So you have one government agency essentially borrowing from another, and taxpayers are going to, in essence, be required to bail out the government side. So you're going to see continued pressure, I think, from members of Congress down the road on this as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.